Thank you, Mrs. Öztürk, for your speech. And now it's time for roundtable. So we invite all of our guest speakers and our moderator, Dr. Luis Martin Domingo, to the stage, please.
Well, thank you very much for staying still there. Gulis was saying that the last presentation is a hard one, so then the right table afterwards is going to be even tougher. But as we have been talking about big challenges for Turkish aviation today, since this morning, I think we can still manage this last challenge of completing this round table today. Well, thank you very much for all the presentation today. Just as a brief summary, we start this morning with talking about the big growth of Turkish Airlines, then continues about the construction of the airport, which goes in good pace, even though it's a very impressive project, the new airport. We continue talking about some regulations, about some warnings of the agreements that are taking place for the new airport, the slot allocation, what is going to happen if Turkey and Europe move one step forward in these bilateral agreements. And then we had some window to the international world by looking different airports, different cities with two airports. And by having, again, we start with big, impressive growth this morning with Turkish Airlines, but we end up with even more this end of the sections with Pegasus Airlines. So it's like a growth and growth and growth, and the airports are filled up. So that's the situation. One quick question that I didn't do before about the Sabiha International Airport is, when is it planned to complete the expansion phase?
We don't have an exact date.
And any target date?
No, we don't know. Yes, they have started, because the second runway has two phases. Mm-hmm. The first tender is done for the complete construction of second runway. They have started, but they are talking about 2000, so there should be a second tender for the completion of it. They're talking about 2018. But what the authorities are talking is, once the second runway is constructed, they will close down the first one for maintenance purposes. So the expansion then is left to 2020, maybe. So, I mean, it should be faster.
But this is one shocking question I have, because I was listening to all the growth planning for Istanbul, but then I see that Istanbul, I mean, Atatürk is mainly blocked with the growth, cannot grow almost anything, and Sabiha is the same. So what is going to happen in the next 2 years with not possibilities to growth? And
actually, for Sabiha Gökçen, I can talk about Sabiha Gökçen, because we have ongoing talks with the authorities. Even without the second runway, with the, for example, high-speed taxiways, with the management of the approaches and takeoffs in a way which can increase the capacity, can be done. We have, as Pegasus, prepared some recommendations. We made with our pilots, we made our own studies, and we're talking with the authorities. Without the second runway, we see that there is a potential to grow about 40% of the capacity. If we have those high-speed taxiways also. So that should be done, so that we can have this 2 years ahead of us to grow. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're right.
Thank you. Looking at, we had two legal experts, and we were talking, I mean, we would like to hear more what could be the consequences of changing the relationship between Europe and Turkey. So at the moment there is an open sky agreement, but if I understand correctly, there are conversations to take this agreement forward. What that will mean for Turkish aviation and the airline strategies which we'll try to discuss today.
Thank you. At the moment there is, I believe, no open skies agreement, but there are still bilateral agreements between Turkey and the 25 EU states. Maybe I believe the 3 Baltic states don't have, so Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia don't have agreements with Turkey. All of the rest have them. And they vary, I believe, a bit in terms of market access freedoms, like frequencies and designation, how many airlines may fly on each side. If the European Union, that is the European Commission or the European Union, plus the 28 member states, would conclude an agreement with Turkey, in other words, it wouldn't be, so to say, a bilateral but a multilateral agreement, but okay, that's a bit legal stuff which we don't have to go into now. Reach an agreement, that would mean that Turkish Airlines would have, because that is always the policy from the European Union, open skies, free market access, that is their mandate under the European treaties. That means that Turkish Airlines would be able to fly from, whether that be Turkish Airlines, Pegasus or any other Turkish Airlines, from any point in Turkey to any point in the EU, plus traffic, picking up traffic between in the EU, between 2 EU points. So that would give a lot of freedom, commercial freedom, to Turkish Airlines in relation to the European market, and vice versa. Of course, that would also mean that the EU carriers would be able to fly from any point in the EU to any point in Turkey, which would create, of course, a huge market, that's for sure. But, and as I said at the end of my speech, if Turkey would accept such a deal, the bilaterals would be, at least in part, superseded by the new agreement. Not totally, but let's not go into the details of which parts of the current bilaterals will stay in place. But there will be, competition law will be applied, state aid rules will be enforced, passenger rights rules will be applied to delay, overbooking, cancellation of flights, safety rules, noise rules, emission rules, and so on and so on. I can go on and go on. In order to have a sort of what they call a level playing field between all the carriers flying in that huge area from the east of Turkey to the west of Ireland. So that is a huge undertaking to accomplish, and a number of big commercial, legal, air policy and economic questions come with them.
So will be Pegasus interested to move into that direction, or?
Yes, I think this is an ongoing discussion with EU since more than, I think, 5 years. It was first that horizontal agreement, which was only about the traffic rights and the liberalization of flights. At that time, our proposal was to have a more liberal agreement, like a common European aviation area. Not only the traffic rights will be liberalized, but we would also gain some more advantages also from this agreement, because I mean, it's a technical detail, but EU carriers may fly from, for example, a British carrier can fly from Frankfurt to Istanbul with that agreement, because it's an EU carrier. Right now, a British carrier can only fly from Britain to Istanbul. So this is also an advantageous position for the EU carriers.
That's under the horizontal.
That's under the horizontal agreement. Yeah. So we said, let's not take horizontal, but take a more comprehensive one, which would liberalize for both sides. And now the talks did not start, but there is a proposal on the table. Will be a proposal on the table, like a comprehensive agreement, which also will take those kind of regulations into the picture, and we want those regulations to be applied, like the slot allocation, competition, or so, because I mean, if we have such rights, if EU carriers have such rights, so we should have the same rights and the same regulations. So we are in favor of it.
May I say something? Yeah. On the horizontal agreement, yes, I heard you saying that. And that is, of course, on paper, absolute privilege which the EU air carriers enjoy. British Airways flying from Frankfurt to Turkey, to Istanbul, Ankara, and so forth. But it is not practiced. There is not one single, as we said in Jakarta, by the way, at a conference a week ago, there's not one single European carrier, and which you will find, let's say Air France flying Rome. Where do we have an EU air carrier clause in Asia? China doesn't have it, India doesn't have it. Let's say Malaysia. Malaysia has, I believe, an EU air carrier clause. In other words, Air France should be able to fly Rome, Kuala Lumpur back and forth. But when you speak to the CEO, your counterparts at the European airlines, and I say, I've never seen a flight from Air France, Rome, Kuala Lumpur, British Airways, Frankfurt, even Frankfurt, New York, or Iberia, Helsinki to Kuala Lumpur again. You won't find that. They all say commercially it's not attractive to do that. And then Lale said, we want in return, and she's not the only one, the free rider clause, something in return. In other words, it's more or less disadvantage for the European carriers to have the horizontal agreement, because for them it's commercially not attractive to operate from a place outside their principal hubs, i.e. Air France flying Frankfurt, Kuala Lumpur back and forth. Whereas the other side says, well, since you have that privilege, at least on paper, I want to have something in return. Are you still with me?
At least on paper, there is a privilege like that.
Yeah, actually, I see the status. I actually see the open sky agreements as the candidate status to EU. There are advantages and disadvantages, and I do understand especially big countries like Turkey, Russia, China. Of course, they will be protective because of their high internal market demand. But we like buts, but in that sense, of course, there will be side effects of these agreements. Not only on behalf of airlines, but also there will be side effects to economy. So we have to consider also these side effects, how it's going to create a synergy in this period. And I believe also not only Turkish Airlines, but also Pegasus Airlines will have advantages in Europe.
It's an agreement.
I mean, I really...
Maybe Rob can give us his overview.
One thing that was discussed whether, let's say, British Airways would fly from Frankfurt to Turkey. That wouldn't happen. But if you look at the low-cost carriers, EasyJet, a British company, flies outside the UK. So it's quite attractive for low-cost airlines. If you think of Ryanair, an Irish airline, operating in other markets.
Yeah, inside the internal market they do. But outside, well, we have, of course, the point of Norwegian now in Dublin, and you see all the implications legally and commercially which come with that. You're right, for internal EU market, it's absolutely true what you say. Ryanair, EasyJet, they fly wherever they want inside the European Union, with or without Turkey attached to it. But if you look at the horizontal agreements, that was the subject. What we were talking about, let's say Malaysia, EU horizontal agreement, then you see no movement actually, no new commercial opportunities.
But they might pay, if that agreement would come into force, they probably would take advantage of that.
It is in force between many. The EU has 114 horizontal agreements with non-EU countries, but there's not much activity. They started in 2008, KLM, Air France, out of London Heathrow to fly into America. And they stopped that.
No, but I think for the low-cost airlines, obviously they're looking at a completely different range. So I think it would be very not attractive to fly to Malaysia for low-cost airlines.
But here it's a different ballgame.
And we do see some changes as well, in the sense that British Airways has a subsidiary called Open Skies, where they fly from Paris actually to the United States.
So they did, but they stopped, I believe, didn't they?
I thought
they stopped.
I'm not quite sure if they stopped, but I know for a long time.
Istanbul is, by the way, we are not actually objecting to this liberal movement, which is proposed by EU. The issue is Istanbul is a location which is serving both to east and west. Plus, we have an advantage, for example, as the airlines in Turkey, the airports in Turkey are open at night. And the Middle East, Russia, Ukraine, the airports are open there. So our aircraft usage is a lot higher than the European carriers, the European low-cost carriers. Ours is like 12 hours, 12.5, which is when compared with Ryanair, it's about 9 hours. Why? Because they cannot fly by night. I mean, yes, we are successfully planning our aircraft, but at the same time, we have this advantage. So why not with a 150 million passenger capacity, why not they don't come here and have Istanbul base, fly to some destinations out of here? This may happen. What we want is, if the regulation is in place, the EU regulations are in place, so I will have, in all terms, be equal to the European carriers, and all Turkish carriers will be equal in terms of regulations.
Yeah, well, you can never apply, may I continue? All the regulations, you know, even inside Europe, you say, we do as if we have a harmonized internal market in terms of traffic rights, competition law, slot allocation, passenger protection, all that is true. Having said that, there are still a couple of differences. One, labor contracts are not harmonized, and that makes sometimes creates competitive differences. Taxation is not harmonized inside Europe. Thirdly, we have all those slot allocation rules in Europe. That's absolutely true, but the way how they are practiced, especially in the southern part of Europe, let's say Greece, Italy, and Spain, they sometimes, certain airports favor the local carriers. I mean, I say it here because I hear that. And the Commission is not, the European Commission is not always in a position to enforce it in order to maintain that level playing field.
Okay, so then there are conversations, there are a way to go to move that in that direction. One thing I would like to, if we don't have possibility to grow much in a slot in the next 2 years or so, do you see any possibility from the practical point of view or from the legal point of view about some merging and acquisitions of airlines within Turkey in order to play the growth via acquisitions of slots? Not of slots, but acquisition of airlines in order to gain slots.
With European airlines?
No, within Turkey, I mean, there are like a number of airlines. We have several airlines in Turkey. Do you see any, during this period until the new capacity is being released, any possibility for any, I don't know if there is any legal obstacle and also any practical interest for doing that?
That's for the Turkish people.
That's for me, right? There are no legal obstacles. I mean, but do I foresee such a thing? Yeah, it's very difficult to answer. Maybe a yes or a no, because
but it could be an option.
Yeah, of course that is an issue, but I think if I strongly believe there will be the growth for Sabiha Gökçen. I mean, we will be able to grow Sabiha Gökçen even with single runway by changing some of the procedures, by construction of these high-speed exit taxiways. How will it be enough? No. Maybe it will bring 40–50% growth, but this is very important. Secondly, probably other hubs will grow, like Izmir will grow, Antalya will grow, maybe a base in Ankara. I mean, we should exploit some other bases maybe in Turkey if we cannot grow Sabiha Gökçen. But I strongly believe that the authorities will do their best to grow also Sabiha Gökçen, even without the additional runway. I mean, the Turkish people are very practical in this sense, to find ways to grab the opportunities and to overcome the crisis or crisis management.
May I say?
So I think...
Yeah, please.
May I respond to that? Well, you say there are no obstacles, but if you would have to apply the European merger rules, and you suppose you would, Pegasus Airlines, would take over Turkish Airlines.
No, I was not talking about that. Yeah, of course.
I see a legal obstacle.
Yes. If it was so, yes, we would. You're right. So it will be very nice, by the way.
Yeah, what to do?
Why not?
So some creativity. This is
Let's toast to that tonight. To that idea, at least.
about mergers and acquisitions. Can we get some experiences from abroad about to use this possibility of merging and acquisition of airlines in order to grow?
I mean, we've seen that in the US a lot in the last 5-10 years or so, both in the local sector with, for example, Southwest and AirTran, and obviously the big carriers, network carriers in North America as well. We've seen that probably also in the last years, partly in Europe as well. So we saw EasyJet and Ryanair picking up parts of KLM's local subsidiary and other kind of subsidiaries of the full-service carriers. So yeah, we've seen some kind of mergers and acquisitions, but probably not always because of capacity constraints. Probably one major exception was British Airways buying BMI, and there it was really about kind of getting slots in Heathrow, and there were quite, I'm not a lawyer, but there were kind of legal constraints what they could do with the slots and how many slots they were able to keep, and the others they had to give up. So it's even if you kind of grow and try to get slots by mergers and acquisitions, it's not that straightforward.
And in Turkey, I think it's
If you are high.
practical when we see, as far as I know, the market it doesn't seem very practical to merge and acquisitions in this market conditions.
If you think about carriers in Turkey,
There may be a small possibility of some of the carriers. Yes, but I mean, I cannot give the names right now. But in terms of, I mean, will it be very easy to, for example, exercise it rightly for next year? I'm not sure, because you have to check the performance of that carrier, the due diligences and everything, the legal constraints and so. But is there an option like that? Yes, there may be an option, because there are carriers in Turkey, like more than 4 or 5 carriers, which have a much more smaller network and smaller capacity than us.
So just to try to finish, I would like to, we passed this growth of Sabiha as well as the new airport in operation, so that we are going to have a huge capacity in Istanbul. Do you see a big, changing the role of Istanbul versus Europe and versus the Middle East? What is the role of Istanbul as a hub that we are discussing here, taking talk on the airlines? I mean, this growth, this capacity availability is going to make a real change for Turkey as an aviation market versus some Middle East or European markets. I mean, it's an open question for.
Definitely, because I mean, Istanbul, there are lots of carriers, the foreign carriers, who would like to fly to Istanbul, and right now they get slots, but not at the amount of slots they are asking. So will be much more carriers in Turkey flying to Istanbul, and use Istanbul Hub more. We as the Turkish players will have more capacity to grow. I think in terms of Europe even, and like Dubai or Frankfurt or Amsterdam, Istanbul will be placed at the top as a hub for transit.
You mean also geopolitically?
Yes, also geopolitically. And that depends on the hub carriers, by the way. I mean, the local carriers. As long as we grow as the local carriers, then there will be this transiting. Otherwise, it's not possible, of course.
I don't think that the extra capacity will not necessarily mean a change in strategy, but it helps them to execute the strategy and basically continue, because the capacity constraints hold them up. So I don't think it will mean a change in what they want to do, because they will just continue and kind of developing Istanbul as a hub, connecting particularly East and West, what we already see with some of the Middle Eastern carriers as well, and probably competing with the Middle Eastern carrier even more so in future.
Well, anyway, it will also enable European carriers from the northwest or on the western side of Europe, let's say Iberia or British Airways, from flying London, Istanbul, Kuala Lumpur, or even set up a base in Istanbul and fly back and forth to Kuala Lumpur. Whether that is commercially an attractive thing is, of course, as we said before, another question, but at least air policy-wise it will be possible, and legally.
And I think for the last comment, I think it's not just the airport project, so it will be an interesting point for the future airport projects also, because there will be around that there will be commercial centers. Istanbul, maybe I won't be objective in that issue, but Istanbul is a attractive place comparing to the region. Whenever I attend to an international conference, I always follow how people show Istanbul, considering the new airport or the airlines. So it has some additional advantages, definitely. But as in my speech, I try to draw the attention to the environmental impact to the city, because I'm from Istanbul and I don't want to lose my city in this context, because it's a really big project and turn the city to a metropole. That's also my concern that I need to mention.
Okay, I mean, we were talking about on-time performance today of the airlines. We are going to try to be on-time performance on the seminar as well with the time plan. But I mean, we have many students in the audience as well. We have experts. We have been talking about the strategies of the airlines. But as an air transport profession, what will be your strategies for students of aviation for their future?
What I can say, when I started this sector, it was about 26 years ago. So at that time, aviation was a sector which was not preferred by the university graduates, because it was one company, mainly run by the government or so, and so it wasn't a sector. It was a company only. Now it has grown, and it is a sector. There are more than there are carriers in it, and for us, for example, with my team, I have very young professionals with me who are very well educated, and they love this business because this business is very dynamic, and you can both. There is the customer communication, but at the same time, it's a sophisticated business, huge coordination, very dynamic, and a very sexy business. So they probably, if they want to work in the aviation sector, an airline company would be a target for them to work in, because it's highly attractive. But we should have also young professionals, the university graduates, in the authorities, I believe, which we were talking before we start, in Turkey. In the regulatory part,
Yeah. Yeah, I fully agree with what you said. And the attraction, I believe, for aviation people is not only the dimension you mentioned, the sexy, so to say, dimension, but also it's cross-border, but that is a bit the same. It broadens your horizons, and from a legal perspective, yes. I believe that, or I find that it is a very attractive field of law, because it encompasses many different fields of law. You apply one day competition law, the next day public international law, then aviation policy, then competition policy, then liability questions we haven't addressed this afternoon or maybe touched upon. We didn't touch on financing. In other words, it's not just airline jobs and civil aviation jobs which may be available to people who specialize, but there are law firms, there are banks, there are insurance. We didn't address insurance. Taxation is becoming more important. Labor relations are becoming more important in aviation. Both these fields of law. Norwegian is a big example, but also the strikes we currently have in Europe. It affects airlines. How do we manage strikes? What are the responsibilities of governments towards their air traffic controllers? How should airlines, if at all, be compensated for damage caused by strikes? All of these questions come on your table, on your desk. Air traffic control is also a place where aviation people are needed, experts, legal managers, and so on and so on. So there's a whole variety of jobs, I to say to the students here in the rooms, where they would need some expertise, and or at least you have sniffed at this field of economics, law, or management, or whatever you have chosen.
For the students,
Yeah.
I may speak. I see the comparing to Europe or other destinations, I see Turkish people very Turkish.
What did you say?
This is our main problem. We need to encourage them for the international internships. Because I want to see foreigners in Turkish Airlines and Pegasus Airlines. That will make them their brand much more international. When I fly with Qatar Airways, even at local Asian airlines, I see many international people, but I don't see much in our carrier. So this is a very dynamic and international sector, so they should be encouraged. Maybe airline companies will provide them scholarships, then they can do it.
Why not?
I think I've got three major kind of recommendations. First of all, take opportunities, and even if they are very small. So I started my aviation life with a 3-month internship, and in 3 months, wasn't the best job, but it gave me access to internal jobs. It enabled me to make contacts, and that's really the second point. So the first point. Take advantage of any little opportunity that you get to work in the industry. When you're in there, make a network, develop your network, get to know people. And the last thing is be passionate. But if you're at 5:30 in the afternoon still here listening to people, you must be passionate. So I'm not very worried about that.
The ones who are listening, yeah.
But I think it's really take opportunities and try to get internship, whatever, because that will help to grow your network and get your knowledge out.
True.
So, well, thank you very much. I think we start with the strategies of airlines, now strategies for students to continue. So then we can finish now, but I just hold for a couple of minutes because I'm going to invite our director, Hatice, to give this. We are in Turkey.
Yeah, like students. Okay, finally we have finished a very intensive program in the second Istanbul Hub, and I am sure everybody is very tired, but I would like to thank especially to our dear or distinguished speakers from academia and the sector. And I believe that this seminars, or it's a good step to continue our seminars in the future. Hope you can enjoy it and join us again. And also, I would like to actually my special thanks goes to the organizing committee of School of Aviation and my precious students. We cannot accomplish it without them. Thank you very much.